This is Shifting Our Schools, episode 100, Finding Your Sparks.
And so one of the very first things that I did last year was to put together an innovation team. I call them spark starters from each school. and what I was really going for with the spark starter was like, I just need representatives from each school that will spark joy, innovation. And I knew that I didn't necessarily need the most techie teachers. I needed teachers who are passionate, innovators, risk takers, encouragers, like sunshine spreaders, like spreading positivity. Because I feel if I could get the right people on the team, then I can teach them the tech and the tools, and we can just, spark joy and innovations.
Listen up, educators. Are you looking to take your classroom to the next level? The technological shift in education is happening right now. If you're looking to integrate technology into your classroom, you're in the right place. Welcome to Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick.
Well, welcome back to Shifting Our Schools. Hopefully you enjoyed that little soundbite of the conversation we have today with Tisha Richmond. So great to have her back on the show. This being our 100th episode of Shifting Our Schools. Crazy to think we've dropped our first episode in January of 2008 with my co-host for the first 30 plus episodes being David Carpenter. I can't thank David enough for starting Shifting Our Schools with me. We started this podcast as a way for us to grow and learn from each other as well as from others. So many great conversations over the years with educators from around the globe who are all learning from each other to make school the very best it can be for students. We still believe today that as society changes, we must shift our schools to keep them relevant for today's learners. And so thank you for those that have been around for all 100 episodes. Some really great stuff. I took some time today to dig back into the archives. I went back and listened to episode 1 as David and I kind of laid out our plan for this. We were live streaming at the time on Ustream TV. And it really was just starting the podcast was a way for us to learn from each other. I was in Shanghai at the time, and David was in Taipei at the time, and we just really wanted to learn from each other. And so we started having these weekly conversations that then, of course, we just recorded and turned into a podcast. So much learning along the way. And it's just been a fantastic part of my own professional learning, professional growth. And that's really what today's episode is, which I think brings it full circle. Is I couldn't have asked for a better conversation for our 100th episode than to have Chris Butler and Tisha Richmond to learn from and bounce some ideas off of. We talk a lot in this episode about supporting teachers and the power of a personal learning network, or a PLN. So this week's question that you can answer and be put in the drawing for this month's free book, the book Classroom Management in a Digital Age by Patrick Green and Heather Dowd, who we were going to have on a podcast here in the near future. But here's this week's question. And the question is, how do you use your personal learning network, or your PLN, and how do you help other educators understand the true power of networked learning through a personal learning network? And I think you'll hear we kind of struggle with this in the podcast as well, which is why I brought this question out to you. So as you're listening to this episode, you'll get some great tips and tricks from Tisha and from Chris, who are both in coaching roles. And last week I was at a school that they were asking me to help teachers understand the power of personal learning networks. And it's really, I find it difficult because I feel like you just got to be in it. You got to be in it to understand it. And so I just really want to hear from you. What are ways that you help support this? So remember, you can head over to sospodcast.org and click on Flipgrid at the top of the website there, or download the Flipgrid app on your mobile device and enter the code SOS Podcast. Each question you answer through the month of November enters you to win that free copy of Classroom Management in the Digital Age by Patrick Green and Heather Dowd. We're excited to hear from you on how you use your PLN, whether that's through engaging with podcasts like this one, or on Twitter, or on a host of other places you can find educators learning together. So leave us a quick video and grow your own personal learning network by becoming an active member of ours. This week, Chris and I catch up with Tisha Richmond, author of Making Learning Magical, Transforming Your Teaching and Create Unforgettable Experiences in Your Classroom. My first conversation with Tisha is just as good as this one. I had Tisha on episode 56, where she talked about gamifying her culinary classroom. Since then, she's transitioned into a new coaching role in her district. She's done a TED Talk at ISTE and continues to think about how she supports other teachers in her district. This episode is full of a ton of takeaways. Make sure to check out the show notes to get links to everything we talk about in this, our 100th episode of Shifting Our Schools. And with that, on with the show. All right, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. I'm so excited that we got the West Coast crew tonight. This is going to be nice.
I love it.
Tish and Chris are here to have another great conversation. I need to go back and look because Tish, you've been on the podcast already once before, and it was such a fantastic conversation. So I look forward to another great one tonight. Chris, how are you doing down in Hood River? And you got to, for those of you, we don't show video, but Chris has got his winter jacket on. He's got his stocking cap on. I mean,
it's chilly here in Hood River right now.
Yeah. So how's it going, Chris?
Yeah.
I'm used to the dry cold in Tri-Cities. It's all new to me. Yeah. yeah, I'm doing well. Had a good day at work today. We are working on building a so the tech specials for the elementary kids. We have librarian assistants that run those for us, and the kids get to do technology about every 5-6 days or so. We haven't had a really good program before, so a partner and I are building this program. We want to get kids doing more coding and robots and green screen and creation things. So we've been working on that. So we're doing some green screen recording for some examples and playing with robots and coding. And I'm just playing. It's super fun.
That's awesome.
What a great day.
I'm putting together a plan. Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah. Very good. Very good.
That's great.
Well, Tish, nice to have you back.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Honored to be on your show.
And I just looked it up. It was episode 56. 56 was the last episode you were on. And this will actually be episode 100 of Shifting Our Schools, which is crazy to think.
Wow.
I know. So it's been fun I've kind of been going back through the archives when we started this thing. We took a long hiatus there, but we actually started the podcast in 2007. And was off doing the world for a while and started the second. Yeah, so it's kind of fun. This will be episode 100. So
that is super cool. Well, that's
even
more special. I feel super honored.
That's why we had to have the West Coast team on. So, well, why don't you give us, for those that didn't listen to episode 56, why don't you give us a little introduction of where you are? And I know when we talked to you, I think the last time I talked to you, you were transitioning into this role. But
I think so.
You were still in
the classroom.
Yeah, in the classroom. So
yeah. Well, I am in Medford, Oregon, the southern part of the state. And I have been a family and consumer science CTE teacher for about 24 years, teaching culinary arts for most of those years, a few years interior design. And like you mentioned, I transitioned to a tech integration specialist role at the beginning of last year. And such a shift for me because, my entire career since I graduated from college, I was in the classroom and that's all I knew. But I have definitely become passionate over the last 5 years with tech integration, and it just made such a transformation in my own classroom, my own teaching. Really, 5 years ago, I was a teacher that was ready to leave education. I was pretty burnt out, and I just began this incredible journey of really transforming the way that I looked at teaching in my classroom. And so now to be in this role and to be able to share that passion and really support teachers K through 12 in bringing new innovative ideas and tech into classrooms to really reach our 21st century learners. It's been so fun. I really loved the new challenge.
That's awesome. And with cool. the last time we talked, episode 56 was all about gamifying, the gamification of learning. When we were talking about all these amazing games that you set up in your culinary classroom. So people need to go back and listen to it. It's like one of my favorite episodes ever, where we just really dug into the gamification that you were doing with your students at the time. In your new role, I think one of the first questions I have in your new role, Are you able to bring any of that into your coaching role? Like, is there
Yeah.
a way to gamify professional development for teachers or support in a coaching role? I mean, both you and Chris
Yeah.
are active coaches now. I'm just wondering, has any of that transitioned for you?
Absolutely. So just to kind of give you a little background of this role, this was the first time our district really had a tech integration specialist. So I was kind of just definitely going into uncharted territory and uncharted waters with this. And so one of the very first things that I did last year was to put together an innovation team. I call them spark starters from each school. and what I was really going for with the spark starter was like, I just need representatives from each school that will spark joy, innovation. And I knew that I didn't necessarily need the most techie teachers. I needed teachers who are passionate, innovators, risk takers, encouragers, like sunshine spreaders, like spreading positivity. Because I feel that if I could get the right people on the team, then I can teach them the tech and the tools, and we can just, spark joy and innovation. So
I love that. So many times we think we need the techie teachers to lead the way. And I find in schools where we really are able to drive change, it's having the right, we say having the right people on the bus. And it's the people who have found a strong foundation in pedagogy. They are still excited about learning, not that everybody isn't, but they're really excited about being a learner themselves. And I even look for people, for better or for worse, that have social capital within the schools.
Absolutely.
You have to have your school-based leaders, because when they come back from a training with you and going like, oh my gosh, that's where you're going to light a spark, because they've already built some of that social capital at their school. So it's not always your techiest people that you want to create one of those. I love that, just the lens that you look through. How long did you already know those people, like being the first time the coaching role, or did you have to spend some time going to schools and kind of feeling it out?
No, the craziest thing. So I accepted this position. I think it was May, a year and a half ago. And one of the very first things that I did when I accepted the position was I met with my boss, and I just said, I remember I met her at Starbucks, and I had like a full like Google slide, like presentation, like a TED talk. This is what I wanted. This is like my vision of what I want to do. And so I just started sharing with her, and I said, I just envision, like, in this role, I need to be able to have a team that represents each school, because there's no way that, one person is going to really be able to truly support that many schools. And so I asked her if I could speak at the ad council meeting that was coming up at the beginning of June with all of the principals from the entire district. And I kind of gave that same TED talk, like, to the principals, and kind of shared my vision. And I said, I need a team of spark starters. And I said exactly what I said to you. I need sunshine spreaders, encouragers, innovators, risk takers. And I gave them a little slip of paper, because I knew that they were, just to save time, I knew they weren't going to be able to, not all of them were very techy. So I did that, and I had them write down 3 spark starters that they would recommend from their school. And so I sent out an email. I created like a very visually appealing, like, Canva infographic of an invitation to them. I sent it out, and then I received some responses right away, but whoever I didn't hear back from, August 1st, I made personal phone calls to everybody that I invited. And I just said, you were selected as this person who blah, 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 blah. And
congratulations.
You won. Yeah, that's kind of what I did. I'm like, that, I was exactly the attitude that I had. And it was funny. I would say probably of all of those phone calls, 90% of them said yes.
Awesome.
And I really think it was just because I reached out personally, shared with them a little bit more about what this was all about. And so then when we started the school year, in that first week in service, I kind of had a meet and greet time with all of the team. And then from there on out, from September through the end of the year, every single month we had an innovation gathering where sometimes I would have a Google Hangout bringing in an expert in something. We would have collaborative time, kind of Ed Camp style, where we'd share and collaborate and connect. And then I kind of created this really lofty goal for myself that I would get to all 19 schools every 2 weeks, which was impossible kind of. It wasn't ever perfect. And I told them that wouldn't ever be perfect, but I kind of had to create a way for me to be as equitable as I could be. And I knew that if I was going to truly support these teachers, I needed to know what learning looked like in those classrooms, because I was a culinary teacher for my entire, career. And so how can I truly support a kinder, second grade, middle school teacher if I really don't know what learning looks like in that classroom and what they're facing? And so that's what I did. I just tried to keep a schedule where I would just go to schools. I would try to connect with the principal if I could, the media techs, or teacher librarians. Our elementaries have media techs. Our junior high and high schools have teacher librarians, and then go into those classes. And it would be very, like, I was not evaluating. Like, that's not, I'm a coach, really, not an evaluator. But it would just be like, I would just sit and watch. And then as I was watching what was happening, then, all of a sudden the ideas would start spinning, like, oh, like flip grid would be awesome in this situation. Or Pear Deck would be amazing here, or, whatever. And I built trust and relationships, because I know that sometimes you have to go slow to move fast, right? And you have to build those relationships and that credibility. And that was a lot of what last year was about, was really building a solid team. I kind of went crazy, breakout EDU crazy the second half of the year. By kind of accident, I basically sold my boss on buying some breakout EDUs for our district. And so I did a breakout EDU at one of our innovation meetings in December. And I told them, I almost want to say I made the mistake of telling them, but it really wasn't a mistake. I said, if you want to do this, I will actually come to your classroom. I will set it up and come to your classroom and facilitate it. And people, they wanted me to, and I did. And I ended up between January. And so what happened was, when I did that, then, it started catching on in the schools, and more people wanted to do it. Yeah. And so between January and June, I facilitated 100 breakout EDU experiences. Wow. And it was like right around the 100 experiences in our district. But what I started realizing, that's not what it was really about. It was really going into these classrooms and showing them what learning could look like, right? And if you can go in and you can show a teacher, this is what learning looks like. This is what the 4 C's, creativity, communication, critical thinking, collaboration looks like. And they see how their students are not only engaged, but immersed, empowered learners. Then they're like, oh, like, I get it now. And now maybe I can do the next breakout, or maybe now I can bring in some other new innovative ideas, because I know that this was really powerful. And then at the same time, it's building trust with not only my innovation team, but other teachers within the schools. Yeah. And I would say, I actually need to find out the number, but I would say between 60 and 70% of our schools ended up buying breakout boxes for their schools after that, because they saw the power in it. So anyway, that was my foundational year last year. And what I really wanted to do this year was empower those spark starters to now do the PD themselves, like to be able to share in staff meetings, have PD held in their buildings, have PD offered through the district. And then I actually developed a second cohort of spark starters as well. And I decided to launch a game. So getting to your original question.
Yeah. I love it though. This is great.
I had to give a little background.
Yeah, I love it.
So basically what I decided is, I can do the same framework really that I did in my classes by creating this storyline and bringing in these game mechanics. I can do the same framework for our team. It's like my class, right? Yeah. And so I had this theme. I call it the Sailing the Seas of Innovation, kind of a play on the 4 C's. And I created this storyline. I created this promo trailer, this video that I played on that first innovation team meeting day. And then I created all of these game mechanics within the game that spark starters could earn. And they were all kind of built around empowering them to connect and to share. And so there's different, like I will have, and I created all of these opportunities, all these game mechanics within an app. I don't know if you've heard of Glide apps. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's an amazing web-based tool where it basically takes a Google spreadsheet and it imports it into Glide apps and sets this app that you can download on your phone. So all of my Spark starters have this app on their phone that has all of the embedded quests and missions in it. And I can keep updating it from my Google spreadsheet. It calculates all the points in my spreadsheet. And so it's keeping track of, they're collecting gold coins. It's keeping track of all of these gold coins. So it's pretty cool. And I would say the hard part about it, the challenge for me, because the idea is super cool. And there are, I would say, about a third of the teachers who are in it to win it. Like they are taking every quest. They're sharing stuff out on Twitter. They are like my power sparks, and they are sold.
My power sparks. Listen to you, man.
Yeah. They're awesome. They're getting Flipgrid badges. I mean, they're totally in it. They're doing the PD, all of that. But it's difficult in that I don't see them every day, right? Like when you're in a classroom and you see how your students are engaging with the game, you can alter the game mechanics and you can bring in new game mechanics to make sure that you're reaching all of your learners. It's more difficult when you really don't have that everyday interaction, and it's a little harder to sell. It's like the sell. So like I had a certain percentage of my Spark starters that couldn't come to that first meeting because they had volleyball games that their kids were in, or they had to come home to, they had kids at home. And so it's a little bit more of a challenge to bring those people on board when, the contact that I have with them is not as much. So all of that to say, yes, definitely you can gamify. And yes, I have gamified and I'm still learning.
And one of the things I like, and I think this is, so it sounds like that original cohort of Sparks, you still have.
Yeah.
And so this is the second year with them.
It is.
Correct. Yeah. And that is also something I think for coaches in schools to be thinking about, is that all too often what we see and what I see is, you get a cohort like that and they get 1 year, and then we're like, but we need to spread this out equally. And so that cohort goes away, and then you're basically starting all over, and you don't get to really level up, which is what you're doing, is continue with that same group. And you can bring another cohort behind them. Right. Yeah. And that second cohort's, you're even doing different activities with that second cohort. Right. But that first cohort will always be your lead Sparks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because they're in year 2, in year 3, right? They're just at a different level of getting into this, right? Getting into the different way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is.
And I love that model that you put together with the Sparks, and having them. Building that trust is so important as a coach, as you know, as you've learned, and then having the team that are in buildings working with, because how many schools did you say that you have?
19 K through 12. Mm-hmm.
And you're the only one.
I'm the only one.
Trying to, right, yeah. So, and it's a huge job. So you need to have that team of teachers, the Sparks, that are in the building with the teachers every day. And pushing forward. And I love the idea of, like Jeff was just saying, building cohort after cohort after cohort, and just building that you kind of building capacity that way.
Yes, absolutely. And what I really found for the structure of my my time with them this year, it's really working. I have they meet from 4:30 to 6 once a month, and I really like kind of the Ed Camp style approach where. Usually to start the meeting, we'll have some type of like a challenge or something fun, like a team challenge, something to kind of bring us all together. And then I ask different Spark starters each month to lead basically like Ed Camp style discussions. And on things that I know that I've seen, right? I've been in their classrooms. I see the things that they're doing. So I ask them, you know what, you are totally rocking it with WeVideo or Flipgrid or Pear Deck or, flexible seating, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Will you lead a table discussion on that? And so then it's making them brave, right? Because it's pushing them maybe out. Maybe it's something that they're a little bit uncomfortable with, but it's giving them it feels kind of safe because it's just a tabletop discussion. They don't have to create anything super formal. And then once they do it, and then people are responding to them and getting super excited about what they're sharing, then they're even more excited to share the next time. And so it's kind of like this, it's almost like this training, but it's also like this amazing time of sharing. And so from like 5 to 5:30, I might have 4 or 5 different table discussions going on. And then at 5:25, we switch and we bring in 5 more table discussions. Sometimes it's, maybe 3 or 4, it depends. And then they can, move if they want to go to one table for 15 minutes and then go to another table for 15 minutes, that's fine. But that way too, the spark starters that presented or that facilitated that discussion are now getting a chance to learn still in that other, that table. And that's worked really well. And I've actually, for my first cohort or my second cohort, I've asked my sparks to lead some table discussions for them too, to help connect, both cohorts together.
Yeah, we did. Kim Cafino gets full credit for this, but when we were in Bangkok working together, and I love this. I love that we're just sharing some ideas of ways that you can run these small cohorts of teachers as you're bringing them on board. But Kim came up with a thing she called speed geeking. It's a little bit similar to what you were doing, but what we did is we would go and find the teachers that were doing good stuff in their classroom, and then we set up like a speed dating, but we called it speed geeking.
Yeah.
So you only had 5 minutes, and so again, like you were saying, teachers didn't have to create anything, right? They came, they sat at a table group, and they would just show, this is what I'm doing in my classroom, or here's a fun project that I've done, or here's how I'm using Classroom, or here's how I'm using Flipgrid, or, name the app or the situation that they've got set up in their classroom. But we set it up as a speed dating thing. So you only had 5 minutes. So that you went around to we'd have, 5 or 6 teachers that would present and do this idea of, so you had 5 minutes of 6 quick little things that you learned about that other teachers were doing. And then after that, you could break in and say, well, I really am interested in Flipgrid.
Oh, I love that.
Then you get to jump into that group with other people who are just interested in that topic. And then there are people like, oh, I want to hear more about how you set that project up. And they go back over to that teacher.
Yeah.
Spend another 20 or 30 minutes going deeper. But it was a really great way for teachers to see what were happening in other classrooms. Because no matter how you try, teachers don't get into each other's classrooms very hard.
Yeah.
So I will put the.
That. I'm gonna take that for my next meeting because
it's speed geeking. It's so fun. People love it too. And you set it up with a little bell, like it's speed dating, and you can have all the directions on what you're allowed to ask and not ask. And but I'll put a link in the show notes because Kim wrote a blog post about it when she started it that outlines exactly how we did it. But it's basically, if you think of speed dating, but only you're showing a thing in your, so I'll put that in the show notes as well. But that's what it reminded me of. I'm like, that works. When you turn, what do we know? We know that in a classroom, when you turn the learning over to students, that's when you get full engagement.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want students to own that learning and that teaching. So to set up a professional development system with your sparks to say, look, we're going to run these mini egg camps where you need to lead. You need to be showing each other what you're doing. And I'm here to support, but you guys are really the ones leading this. And you have to be willing to share. B, if you signed up for this cohort, that's part of what's required of you.
Absolutely.
And we all rise,
100%. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it.
Very cool. Well, I want to kind of transition a little bit because 2 things. One, right before we started recording, Tish and I were talking about feeling disconnected from your PLN a little bit. And I am the same way, feeling disconnected from my PLN. I'm just not on Twitter. I'm not reading blogs and commenting like I was. And I almost feel bad. Do you feel bad?
Yeah. I do. If I don't feel like I'm connecting as much as I do, I absolutely do. Yeah.
And nobody else cares but me.
Yeah,
Like that's what
exactly.
but I feel bad, it's just so
absolutely.
like nobody else cared. Nobody knows I feel bad. Nobody cares, but I feel like I'm not connecting, even though nobody
Yeah,
else is.
so responsible. I get it.
But I'm one of the things, and both of you in your coaching roles, one of the things that I've been struggling with is how do you get teachers to understand the value of a PLN?
Mm.
Like I was just one of the school districts I was working with this week. That was one of our things. It was like, one of the things we were talking about is setting up systems to feed yourself, right? And no matter how many different ways I try to explain the power of a PLN in this digital world, I never seem to be able to get people to understand, like, this is literally the best professional development you can create for yourself. And
Absolutely.
do you have any ways that you help explain to teachers or try to get teachers to be, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is building that into my gamified structure. That's part of the challenges were like getting on Twitter, sharing out with I have an IM549C hashtag that we use to share. I created a Facebook group just for the safety of those who just aren't quite there yet to share on Twitter, that we could at least have a group where we could share, within our Sparks. And then we also started a Voxer group, which I love for kind of expanding conversations that maybe you have on Twitter. But it's still hard. Like, I created all of these things, but for people to buy in, I have some that totally have and are starting Twitter chats now, and I'll see posting a lot, and I have quite a few that aren't there yet. And so I think it is a challenge. And I have a graphic that I created, my own graphic, but it was based on a graphic I saw a long time ago that has the 5 Twitter birds. Have you seen that? Where it's like the first Twitter bird is like, I don't get it. And the second Twitter bird is like, okay, I'm listening. And the third Twitter bird is like, oh, like now, I'm hooked. And then by the 5th Twitter bird, like this is my daily life. This is just a part of who I am. And that's how I felt my journey was. I mean, I didn't get it when I first started. And now all of a sudden it's become a huge part of my life. And some of my literally closest friends are my best friend I met on Twitter. Yeah. I mean, honestly, we've gone family vacations together. It's crazy, but that's the truth. But I think you're right. It's very, very difficult to get that. It's hard for people to wrap their head around that idea.
And I kind of see the same thing. I do the same type of things that you do. When I'm working with teachers, I talk about how I've learned so much through my PLN on Twitter or whatever the case is. In trainings, I always mention it. And when we do a reflection at the end, I stole this idea from you, Jeff. At the end, I always do a public reflection. So your 3 Ps that you talked about, private, protected, public. And I have them post something with a hashtag on Twitter or whatever the case is. But I think a lot of them, I've heard things like you said, I just don't get it, or I don't have time. So just, I think it's similar to a lot of the work that I do with teachers, where they don't know what they don't know. And if they've never actually seen it or experienced it firsthand, it's tough to explain, like, this is literally the best learning experience I've ever had is through my PLN.
Yeah. And maybe I just need to be more explicit about it. I mean, and I like that. What's so funny is, until you said that, Chris, I totally forgot about that 3P protocol that I used to use. And I don't think I came up with it. I probably stole it from somebody else. But the idea is at the end of a training, you have people reflect in 3 separate places. And one is privately. So you reflect privately in your own private journal that only you see. You reflect in a public, how do you say it? It's
protected.
Public protected. That's what it was. Public protected place. So basically within our classroom, but somehow that you have to write it down, right? So it could be on a Padlet, or it could be in a flip grid, or it's protected within the group that was there that day. And then the third share is a public share. So getting people to kind of reflect in these different spaces, and then being able to debrief of how do you write differently. I mean, those are 3 different genres of writing in today's world. I mean, every kid needs to know how to write in those 3 places.
That's awesome. You guys just planned my next meeting. I love it.
Hey, that's what
Who knew?
this is what PLNs are for, right?
Yeah.
This is what I totally forgot about that 3 Ps, man.
Yeah.
See?
Oh, I love it. I use it all the time.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Now, here's the other thing. You both, I know, Chris, you've used Voxer groups as well.
Yeah.
I've never thought of using, and teachers like it. It works for you. Chris, talk about how you've set it. I know you've had it. You've set it up in the past as well.
So actually, Erin got me hooked on it. Erin Dickey got me hooked on it. She used Voxer quite a bit. Group of teachers, and then we got it going when we were doing this awesome thing. But basically, Voxer is like it's a walkie-talkie, but you can also have text conversations. And what really kind of sold me on it, what Erin really liked about it was the fact that you could hear someone's voice and it was a conversation, but you could get to it when you had a chance. She would be receiving messages during class when she was teaching, but she would check it planned period or at lunch or stuff like that, and she would be able to respond when she had availability to. But it was just kind of an ongoing conversation about a specific topic or a question or whatever the case is. So really kind of a neat way to get a group of teachers together and have a conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I love Voxer, and I like Voxer best when it's smaller groups. So I think I was introduced to Voxer first at like Ed Camp Global or something like back maybe in, I don't know, it was probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And it was big groups, like around, gathering around certain topics. I find sometimes with really big groups, you get lost, or you feel like you're so behind in the conversation, like you just can't catch up.
Can't keep up.
And so I have a group that there's 5 of us, and we are all from actually there's 5. It's 5 girls and 5. It's 8 of us. There's 5 girls and 3 guys. We call ourselves the 53s, and we're all kind of in the same space, in that we are all connected educators. A lot of us are authors. We are all working in education in some realm, and also like trying to balance this crazy world of blog writing and podcasting and writing and all of that. And so sometimes I think in our day-to-day life, maybe it's hard for people to understand, like to truly like where we are with, being globally connected and some of the struggles that we face. But in that group, it's like a safe place to just share and to support each other and encourage each other. And we will check in. We're all over. We actually, one of them is in Canada. We're all over the place. And so all different time zones. And so I'll get up in the morning and there already be a stream of conversations starting.
That happened.
I join in to work, and we check in every single day. And so we feel really close because we're getting to hear each other's voices, and it's really, so sometimes our conversations are about education. Sometimes it's about
support group.
It's like a support group. But it's awesome.
So what do you think would be the difference between using something like Voxer and something that like the Marco Polo app that's video based? Do you think there would be a difference? Or I'm still finding, and I'm just interested in this because I still find that there are a lot of teachers who don't want to see themselves on video. So I'm wondering if just the audio of Voxer allows you to, still be in bed answering Voxers and not having to worry about exactly what you look like because nobody's going to see you. And I just wonder if that's enough of a privacy thing that makes Voxer, I don't know. I just wonder if there's anybody.
I haven't used Marco Polo. Go ahead. Were you going to say something, Chris?
Oh, I was just going to say, I did like the Voxer because of that. It was personal enough. I could hear people's voices. Like Tisha was saying, like it's a conversation. You hear their voice. So you kind of get to know who they are and that sort of thing. But you can respond anytime, no matter what you look like, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And you can put somebody on 3 times speed too, if you need to.
If you need to really speed them up, like, come on, get to the point.
Some people I'm like, you are a 3-speed person, you are a 1-speed person.
It's just, and this is what I love about all these different apps. Like, I just thought about Marco Polo because in our real estate company, that's what we use all the time with our contractors. So a lot of our, we live in Seattle, but a lot of our rentals and our contractor live in Spokane. But our contractor can walk through one of our properties that we've never been in on Marco Polo, and we can watch it, rewatch it. We have conversations back and forth. He can be in the hardware store saying, which one of the toilets do you want me to buy? But the video aspect allows us to have a different conversation. But that might, I'm just in my own head. That works for that. Is Voxer something that creates more of a community feel in this idea of a protected public space, where you have control over it? And I like the idea, because you said I downloaded Voxer a couple of years ago. I'm going to be honest, I've never used it. I don't use it. But can you like share links and stuff in it then too? Because there is text, so you can flip links in and stuff.
Text, audio, links, pictures.
No pictures.
So yeah, it's great. And I think even for some people, even giving a voice audio is a stretch. And I found that when I was using it in our school a couple years ago, I used it as kind of a way to connect on a book study, because it actually is a great way to do a book study.
That's a great idea.
And
I love that idea. That's
you can
book study.
You can share out like a Canva image every day, a new question, and people can respond asynchronously. And that's the beauty of it, is the asynchronous piece, because everybody has different times when they can chat. Sometimes it's on a walk, sometimes it's on the car ride. But I think what I found, that there are some people who do not want to hear their voice, and so they had a really difficult time with that. And I didn't think about that at first. I'm just so used to hearing my own voice. I remember a time that I didn't like it. Now I'm like, I'm not getting away from it. So.
Yeah, that's right. This is the way I sound. So get over it. Yeah.
But everybody has a different comfort level.
Yeah. What do you think, like group size? You were saying too big a group, you felt moved too fast. And you too, Chris, have you found is there a group size and that kind of stream? Because it really is streamed conversation is really what it is. Do you feel like there's a size? What size have you felt like you said you're comfortable with a group of 8? You feel like that's working for you? Bigger, smaller? Do you think that's about the right size?
Are you asking me, or are you asking
either one of you?
Okay, I think it's a good size. I would not want to go. I mean, it depends on how active people are in the conversation too. Some people are more active than others, but I think I would say no more than 10 is probably my ideal size.
Okay. I think that's about where I would probably land too. A little more than that, you kind of get lost if everybody's active. Right. But that's a big if, right? Sometimes people are just quote unquote lurking, which is fine.
Which is fine, yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
So speaking of trying to grow the PLN, trying to be more active in that, and we're talking about Voxer and Twitter, and I started a Facebook group with Tyler Ablin, the East Cascades Innovative Educators Group, and just trying to build groups of teachers, innovative thinkers, just to talk shop and bounce ideas and do cool things in education. Do you have one, Tisha or Jeff, that you like best? Twitter's kind of my go-to, but sometimes it can feel more impersonal than like the Voxer or that sort of. It just kind of, I don't know. Do you have one that you prefer? Is it choose what the weapon that's best for this battle?
Yeah, Twitter is where I would probably say that I live most often. I just got connected on LinkedIn, but I'm not really participating very actively. Facebook is kind of a weird space for me because it was my personal space, and now it's kind of become like a lot of people in my PLN now are on there. And so it's this weird mix of like high school friends.
That's the problem with Facebook, right? Like it's a little of this and a little of that. Yeah. It's not clearly defined anymore. And
it's not. It's a little kind of awkward. So I'm like, I share something out and I'm like, I don't know who really wants to hear that, but do you just have your own profile? Have you started a page yet for yourself? I do. I have a Make Learning Magical page that I try to keep, like if I write a blog or I share a podcast, I'll put it there. But then what really, I think how I'm using Facebook the most is I started a group for gamifying family and consumer sciences.
Cool.
And that group is like up to about close to 2,000 now. And that has just been a really neat space for teachers who are just, trying new things in their classroom, and it feels safe for them to share, and a great like support community, an idea sharing community. And so that is probably the aspect of Facebook that I've enjoyed the most, is kind of building that community of educators. But I think what I love about Twitter is that it really brings us out of our silos, because for so long as a culinary teacher, I'm like, who's going to understand me? I give my students chef's knives. Like, no one gets me. And then when I started connecting on Twitter, I'm like, geez, like I can learn. People can share out an idea, like a 5th grade teacher can share out an idea, and I can be like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I can bring that into my classroom this way. So it really is this place that is, you're being inspired by so many different perspectives and viewpoints and educators from all over the place.
The thing I'm always trying to tell teachers too is like, you have to remember, I think you being a culinary teacher is a perfect example. And I don't know if you were, but in many schools, you're the only culinary teacher, right? And so you don't have a staff room where you get to go talk to 5 other culinary teachers and bounce ideas around.
Right.
But Twitter is that for so many people. I mean, I've got some of the small school districts that I'm working with here. There's literally like one teacher that teaches science. And I'm like, how are you filling your cup? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I go to a conference. Like, that's not going to do it. You know, you can be doing this every single day. # science chat is just, that's it. You just need to know one spot, and then make that a habit. How do you start to make that a habit so that PLN starts to work for you?
That's it.
It is key. Yeah. And I think too, it's like if you're on Twitter as an educator, you're a learner, right? Yeah. Like you don't go to Twitter to not learn.
Exactly.
If you're an educator, if that's what you're in that space. Yeah. And so I think that's the beauty of it, is you're connecting with people who are passionate like you are, and aren't going to be like sucking the joy out of education for you. They're going to be filling your cup. Like you
filling your cup. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if they're not, block them or don't follow them anymore.
Right. The other tool I'm interested in using that I think Chris might even help for you that I've used off and on is Slack, which we use. A lot of companies use Slack because of the opportunity to have different channels, which allows you to have different conversations. So we used it at eDuro Learning and loved it because you could have so many different channels talking about stuff. We use it in our other business to keep, we've got one channel for all of our different properties. So you can constantly keep these, they're chat conversations is what they are, but you're allowed to put them in channels. So I'm even thinking, I'm just wondering, is there a way to use something like that as well? And the thing, again, the thing I love about all of these tools is these are tools that are used in the business world. Mm-hmm. It's not like we're trying to make a tool do something which we're really good at in education. We're trying to force a tool to do something in education that it was never meant to use. Right. But I think Slack's a pretty cool one too. And you get a lot of freedom with that with the free, as well. But just more of that chat. I'm always looking for a chat. Today's Meets doesn't do it for me as far as like using a chat program when I'm trying to show teachers back channel chatting or how you might use a chat in the classroom. And I can't find one that I like. All the free good ones went away. So anyway.
I haven't used Slack. I mean, I love Google Hangout for conversations.
Yeah, kind of a conversation.
But not.
Well, as we wrap this up, I want to talk a little bit about your book. How's the book doing?
It's amazing. It's kind of surreal, to be honest. I just feel so grateful that I've had the opportunity to be able to share my story. And it's been really, it's humbling and really cool when I get to have conversations with other educators who have read it and maybe is taking, able to maybe transform their classrooms or bring some of the ideas into their world. And I think the best stories for me is when I hear of an educator who is really at the brink of leaving the classroom or leaving education, and they read my book and they, were rejuvenated or re-inspired. And those are the best stories. Cause I think like even if there was one teacher that I was able to help bring joy into their practice and help transform their classroom, like that is that's was worth it all, right?
Well, that's why we're teachers, right? It's the same thing. I have teachers all the time, with all the professional development I do. I have teachers all the time like, don't you miss the kids? And I'm like, yeah, of course I miss the kids, but you need to understand you're my kids. Yeah. And I just need to see at the end of the training day, one of you has a sparkle in your eye and you're going to go impact another 30 kids. That's all I need. That's what I need.
Absolutely.
That's it for me as well. So, and I have to tell you,
So-
you probably don't know this, but at NCCE last year, I was stalking you. I was sitting in the audience. all the time
I
watching
know. I saw you.
Oh, I didn't know
know
if you saw me.
exactly where you were. You're in the front right-hand side. I totally did. I think I even said hi to you.
Yeah. I was stalking you the whole time. I was like, I got to just go learn. I got to go figure this out.
You're
So,
awesome.
but
no,
the
I
book
was
is
super excited to see this.
the book is Make Learning Magical, transforming your teaching and create unforgettable
Experiences in the classroom.
experiences in the classroom. Right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And
We'll
there's
make sure there's a link
actually,
to that.
I was on, I was on Twitter this afternoon, and I saw a video that was posted, a TED Talk at ISTE 19 that you did about that.
I did.
Cool.
I was part of the TED Talk Masterclass Showcase last year.
Awesome.
And it was kind of one of those things that I had the opportunity to join, and I'm like, oh, I would love to become a better speaker. And I've just always, been always very intrigued with TED Talks and inspired by them. And so I thought this would be great. And so part of the masterclass is you create a TED Talk, right? Like that's your final thing.
Yeah.
So I did, and then you submit it. Well, I did not in my wildest dreams think it would get accepted at all. Like I did not think it was going to get accepted. And so when it did, it was just like this, it was like, I was so excited and so flippin' scared. I'm like, oh my gosh. Cause it just feels different, right? Like I've presented lots of sessions and stuff, but for some reason that just felt different. And so it was such an honor, to get to present at ISTE for the TED Talk. And it was super scary. Like I remember I was pacing back and forth and,
it was amazing. You did great.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So it just got got released yesterday. So
very cool. Well, we'll make sure we put a link to it in the show notes as well. But there is something about a TED Talk. I don't know what it is, but you can be a great presenter, but somebody makes you do a TED Talk and it's like a different level, right? Like you gotta, because you've seen so many of them, you're like, I gotta know my stuff.
Yeah.
Like you can't get away with not knowing, which the process, the thing I love is the process of going through preparing for a TED Talk is the same process we need to send kids through when we're making them do presentations in our classroom.
Absolutely.
Presentations in your classroom are not writing some bullet points on the slideshow and then turning around and reading the bullet points. Go watch any TED Talk. That doesn't happen in a TED Talk. So if you're going to make kids present, go through the process because it is such an introspective, scary, powerful, I think, process to go through.
It was an incredible process. And that if anybody gets a chance to go through the TED Talk Masterclass to ISTE, I would totally recommend it.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, it was great. And it was great to hear the story, the book. And I love the story about the student that you had. That I'm not going to give it away, but it was awesome.
Go watch the video. Good.
Yeah.
Well, Tisha, thank you for taking some time with us today. And I've got so many great ideas. This is what I love. I love when you get to talk with your PLN. And Tisha and I met for the first time at, was it PDX?
It was integrated. At that dinner.
At that dinner, we sat. We happened to just sit across the table from each other, and this entire conversation was our dinner.
Yeah,
like I don't think we ate. I think we just started chatting, and it was insane. It was so awesome.
It was so awesome,
and I love it. Every time we get together, I'm just like, I need somebody to help me with some things. Of my PLN, so good.
Oh, ditto. I learned so much from you both.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris. As always, appreciate it for you as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. It was truly an honor.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit sospodcast.org, facebook.com/Jeff Udick, and on Twitter @JUdick. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Shifting Our Schools.